Is it fair to say rock bottom for the Cardinals? Because, again, I always try to be fair. Now, other teams, you could be 30 games below 500. But for the Cardinals, an organization that holds itself, as it should, to a higher standard, this does feel like rock bottom to me. And I wasn't here for some of the bad years in the 90s. And as I said earlier in the show, I got here in 2008 where the Cardinals haven't had a losing record since I've been here, which is something we should also remember when we talk big picture about the DeWitts, John Mozeliak, etc. That being said, right now, it feels like rock bottom when I'm not even including the Braves series. I actually think the Braves are pretty decent. Braves are a team similar to the Cardinals. But when you lose, 5 of 6 to the Tigers and the Pirates, last place teams with the Tigers when you started that series, last place team with the Pittsburgh Pirates, the last, 2-3 weeks, seemingly you can only win a game if Adam Wainwright starts the game. The offense is anemic. The pitching staff is putting up historically bad numbers in terms of walk rates. You have no starters besides Adam Wainwright. I know they're sending John Gant to the bullpen, but you could probably tab a couple other guys to go to the bullpen. But you have nobody to take their spot. So does it feel like rock bottom to you guys? We'll start with Jim.
I'm very hesitant to say yes, because Arizona's in town tonight. And I say that kind of serious in a way, because if you lose 2 or 3 to Arizona, that's worse than losing 3 or 4 to the Pirates. Arizona's worse. I mean, they just got done setting the all-time road losing consecutive streak in the history of the game. So if you lose 2 or 3 to Arizona, you get a little bit lower on the rung. But in terms of this current ownership's group, this is pretty bad. This is about as bad as it's gotten in a long time. It's close to that same atmosphere that occurred right on that Saturday night when they fired Matheny in July. Mm-hmm. It's a very similar feeling, because it's like hopelessness. There's nothing positive. There's no way of getting out of this mess right now. And the organization, I mean, there are no options right now. There are no options down below, and apparently they have no options to go out and get anything.
And remember, that team was actually better.
Yes.
Because Mike Matheny, when he was let go, he never had a losing record for a season as a member of the Cardinals as the manager. This year, the Cardinals they're now 4 games below 500. They're 37 and 41. They're 8 games back. They're 8 games back. Another bad series, you could be double-digit games back of the Brewers.
Look, you also have the situation, it feels like it's a broken record, but it seems like every night, guys, after 2 innings, you go, that's all for this. Let's go watch the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's go watch the NBA playoffs. Let's see where the Dodgers and Padres are playing. Yeah, gymnastics, whatever. Their games are over by the 3rd inning most nights. So it's like, why bother? That's maybe more indicative of rock bottom of how bad it is right now, because you got a pitcher who can't get out of the first. How many times have you watched a TV broadcast of the Cardinal game and you go, gee whiz, man, you got to get out of the first inning with this guy, don't you? And it's said too often night after night.
Cameron, your thoughts, and also text line. Anybody chirping the Redbirds?
I think they're doing great. They're working their butts off, dude. Their tails off. So I think they're in a really good spot. They're just about to hit their mark. We're waiting on it, man. I don't know. And look, they're banged up, and the pitching's a big issue. But they still got some monster guys in the lineup. I mean, they still got goalie Arenado, the Janssen. I don't know. Like they're not hitting. They have to do. I'm surprised they didn't do anything though. Just to
yeah.
Over the weekend, it's like this is a perfect time just to make a change, just to let everybody know, let the fan base, let the organization, let the city know, like, okay, we understand. Here's what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do this weekend. But on the other hand, they didn't do it, and the same things are going on and on and on. And I think people are just completely frustrated, man. But they are working their tails off.
They're working their tails off.
I'm sorry, I can't stop saying that. It's ridiculous.
and look, we brought this up several weeks ago. And I'll be the first person to say, I do like when somebody is positive and supportive of his guys, but it's gotten to a point where you can say, this is inexcusable. I'm frustrated. We have to execute better. we are better than this. Our fans expect more of this. That's not even throwing people under the bus. That's actually all that Cardinal fans want to hear. And I get it, but day after day, because Mike Schilt does talk twice a day, and he does a Zoom 2 times a day, and he's a very positive person. But when you've heard this now for seemingly 15, 20 straight games, where, look, I get it. There are some positive things here and there. But overall, the product is not positive. And it's fine with just saying, look, we have to be better. This is inexcusable. Yes, there are injuries. Everybody's dealing with injuries. We need to be better. Our fans deserve better. That's all he has to say. That's not even throwing individual folks under the bus, which, by the way, I'm also okay if he did that in a professional manner.
I'd rather them, instead of the warm-ups when you get there early, all the guys, just bag them like you would in hockey, right? Like you have a couple bad games, you're going on the goal line and you're doing mountains. Wouldn't that be hilarious? Just to set the tone, and then they go and play. I don't know. So you got to spice it up, man. Enough's enough. You're kind of backed into a corner now, where it's what are we doing here? You got to figure something out. You got to put your foot down on something. You've done all you can. You try to stay positive. It's just not working. So now you have to change that.
Right.
So I don't know.
But that's the whole point. And Schilt was asked about that. It was Brooke Grimsley over the weekend.
Rookie girl. What's up, girl?
About basically the conversation around Jeff Albert. And Mike Schilt responded with, I'm not going to look at this guy as a scapegoat for number one, our team. He did mention health, which I think is more on the pitching side than the position player side. Because, look, okay, O'Neill was hurt a little bit. Bader's been banged up. Paul DeJong banged up, but back. But when I look at the issues offensively, I don't really look to injuries. I do think it's fair, especially in terms of the starting rotation. But with the position players, it's Tommy Edman, we need more out of you. It's Paul Goldschmidt, we need more out of you. It's Dylan Carlson even after your hot start. We need more out of you. It's Yadier Molina after your exceptional start. We need more out of you as well. You can go down the line. Paul DeJong. Paul DeJong is a guy who, he was an all-star. I know in that odd year he was the one Cardinal all-star, but he's a guy who plays good defense, has 30 homer power. He's not going to hit 300, but 245 is okay with power. You can't hit 180. You can't hit 175. So when I look at the Cardinals offensively, I don't blame injuries. It's their guys not performing, and that's why the Tommy Edman comment from Thursday night, if you add that comment to the fact that you lost 2 to Detroit, then you lose the opener to the Pirates, then you have that comment from Tommy Edman, which I think was absolutely damning, either to Jeff Albert, to the players not being prepared, to Mike Schilt because he's the manager of all those guys, and really to the Cardinals organization because it's top down. That's a bad look to everybody, whether it's Bill DeWitt, John Mozeliak, everybody on down when you hear a comment like that. And I don't even think Tommy Edman was trying to throw people under the bus. I think he was asked a question and he answered directly, and for once an athlete actually told us the truth. But my point is more so, I felt like that was the critical mass of somebody's going to get fired. And then they continue to lose, besides the Waino game, they lose 3 of 4. So you lost 2 to the Tigers. And by the way, you lost 3 of 4 to the Braves. I'm not even bringing that up because I think the Braves are all right. But then you lose 2 to the Tigers. You lose 3 of 4 to the last place Pirates. And you have the comments from Tommy Edman. It feels like a time that somebody's going to lose their job. And I don't cheer for people to lose their job, but Jim Heuer, you brought it up. This feels worse than several years ago when Mike Matheny was let go. Because if you remember the conversation around that team, I don't think a lot of folks thought that Mike Matheny was going to be fired mid-season. I remember the narrative being, okay, he'll probably get fired, or that conversation gets pushed to the offseason. With Jeff Albert, I think everybody is very fairly talking about him losing his job right now. And when you look at the lack of production for 3 years now, and the fact that the team is even worse this year, I mean, that's a very fair conversation to have. It feels like the Cardinals have gotten to a point where somebody should lose their job over the performance or lack thereof.
There's a lack of track record, to your point. There's really no success with the current hitting philosophy that the organization has. It just hasn't been very good. You go back to the last year, a couple of years when they made the playoffs. They made the playoffs because their pitching was unbelievable, and they got just enough scoring and runs to make it happen. Not because the hitting was worth a darn. It just wasn't that good. I mean, you go back to that series against the Nationals. The Nationals pitched well in that playoff series, but you're talking like Cardinals were like almost no hit through 6-7 innings every night in that series. That's how bad it was from an offensive standpoint. And we're a couple years removed from that, and it's not getting any better. You also bring up, we compared the Matheny thing to where it's at now. Matheny had a track record. Whether you like the guy or not, he had a track record of getting that team into the playoffs and being somewhat successful. It wasn't like they were not making the playoffs. This group right now, they are so far removed from being a playoff contender. It feels almost hopeless.
Well, that's the whole point. Look at Matheny. Even if you agreed at the time that he should have been let go, he comes in, and did he inherit a really good roster? Yes, he did. A team that won the World Series and a young team that was stacked that also had a lot of veterans. And you go back to Carlos Beltran and all those guys and Yachty and Waino, and you go NLCS, World Series, NLCS, 100-win team, playoffs. And then you had the drop-off, but still, that's a lot of wins. When you go to the NLCS, your first 3 years, you go to a World Series, you do have some equity. You have some notches on your belt. And that's where even Mike Maddox has more equity than Jeff Albert. And Jeff Albert, his first time as the hitting coach, the guy, not an assistant, for a major league team, he doesn't have that track record. And you now have 3 seasons where the production isn't there. So I don't know. I just feel like the Cardinals as an organization, they usually have a pretty good sense of what's going on with their fan base. And I would think that they can sense that the fan base is really ticked off. I was at an event on Saturday, just a gathering of folks, and people are coming up to me asking, but why is the hitting coach still there? Right? I mean, think about that.
Right.
You're having a drink and, having lunch, and that's what people are talking about. That's what Cardinal fans are talking about, legitimately. They're like, why is the hitting coach still here? That's a real thing.
Yeah. CB and MV just chimes in and goes, Charlie, as well as I do, these guys are grown-ass men, and they do not need a hitting coach to tell them what to do at every bat. At what point do these guys not look in the mirror?
100%, but they're not going to get rid of the players, especially if they have contracts. I mean, you're just going to cut Paul Goldschmidt. You're going to cut Paul DeJong. Like, that's just not how it works. And I'm not even saying it's fair. It's just the way it is. Usually, you get rid of and you make a change the person or the folks that are easiest to move in and out, and that's somebody like a hitting coach. That's normally how these things go. Look at the Diamondbacks, by the way. The Diamondbacks, who are here, and they're awful. A month or so ago, the report was, with Torey Lovello, they were either going to fire him or his staff, and Darnell Coles and all those folks.
Yep.
And that's what they did. And this was the Diamondbacks, who are just historically bad with this ridiculous losing streak going on. I understand the Diamondbacks are not held to the same standard, nor they should be, as the St. Louis Cardinals, but they made that move, and they basically said, look, it's going to be manager or it's going to be some staff members. We have to make a change. What's going on is unacceptable. Now they've continued to lose, don't get me wrong, but still, I feel like we're at that point with the Cardinals that something has to change.
Look, changing the lineup by taking the guy who was batting first and moving him seventh and moving everybody up, that's not a drastic change of your lineup. That's basically just doing the same thing over and over. We're just going to move one guy. They have to just, we joked last week about throwing names in a hat. You just got to do something completely different and off the wall just to change it, because it's the same thing over and over. Any team that's losing and you just keep doing the same thing over, it's not going to get any better. It's just not. Like yesterday, the Cardinals have a perfect game pitched against them by a kid who's in his first game he's ever pitched in the majors, Max Kranick. Max Kranick was a 11th round pick, 345th overall.
Way worse than me.
Right. We're not talking about a guy who's one of the top prospects in the game. This is just a guy, and he had a perfect game against you. That's awful. That's awful. There's no getting
Good for
around.
him, though.
I'm saying congratulations to him, but he's not Drysdale. He's not Gibson. He's just a guy. And you have a team that's just that's a situation where when you come to the ballpark yesterday, you said, we got a kid. We should light this guy up. This is going to be a good day for us. It was exactly the opposite.
And that's why I try to be fair. Even if you go back to the Marlins series, where Mike Schilt got chirped, as he should, because when they lose to the Braves, and he had the comment where I'm always having to defend this group, he brought up the fact that you swept the Marlins. The Cardinals are above needing or wanting or requiring praise for sweeping the Miami Marlins. As an organization, you're above that. However, because I try to be fair, I could look at that series and say, you know what? They did face Trevor Rogers. They did face Sandy Alcantara. I'll give them some credit, but still, you don't brag about that. Even go back to the Tigers. It's a really bad look when you lose both games to the Tigers. However, again, if I'm reaching to try to be fair, overly fair to the St. Louis Cardinals, I can at least say, well, Matt Manning was the 9th overall pick. He's pretty good. I know his numbers in AAA weren't great this year, but he's a high pick, big strikeout guy in his past. He comes up. He's been pretty good. He pitches tonight also. But he's been pretty good in a couple starts. That Tarek Skubal, he's pretty dang good. And look how he pitched yesterday. I think he had 9 strikeouts, whatever it was. So he's a pretty talented arm. Again, I'm bending over backwards right now to try to be overly fair to the St. Louis Cardinals. But then, as you mentioned, Jim, then you face our guy Max Kranick, who had a 4.66 ERA at AAA, and he's making his major league debut. And these are the guys that are dealing against you. And we made the joke last week, and it was a fantasy baseball joke. But I said, who do you want to stream if you want to win? It's whoever's facing the St. Louis Cardinals. It's true. It's 100% true.
Absolutely it is.
Oh, it's raining hardcore here, by the way, guys, with lightning. Just so you know. But there's some good...
it's going through the
It's
air.
coming your way. It's coming your way.
It's just so much bad. The kid Kranick, when he batted yesterday, he had like a 7-pitch at bat against whoever was pitching against. I'm going, this guy's never swung a bat in like months, and he's up there. Didn't need 7 pitches just to get him out. It's terrible.
Here's some good text coming. There's some good text.
Okay.
What do we got? What do we got?
Steve Fletcher, the womb strat chair, chimes in and goes, the pitching was so bad yesterday that Max Kranick got his first major league at bat before he threw his first pitch.
That's amazing when you think about that.
That's right, homeboy. Good text there, dude.
And so, look, we just complained about Jeff Albert and the offense, which is 100% fair. But then look at the pitching staff. So the walk rate of the bullpen is borderline historic in terms of how bad it is. And then you go and you make a move and you send John Gant to the pen, which, by the way, if you look at numbers, I know he walks everybody. He was leading the league in walks. I don't know if he still is, but when they made that move, he still has a 3.76 ERA. Okay, he's Harry Houdini in terms of getting out of jams. At least he was early. I know it's bitten him late.
Yeah.
But my point is more so, I think I would put Oviedo or Carlos in the bullpen first before John Gant. I understand that Mike Schilt doesn't have a lot of options, but the overall point is you could say, look, the Cardinals need or could put Oviedo, Gant, Carlos Martinez, and KK may all be better suited to be long men or weapons out of the bullpen. That's a legit point to make. That is your entire starting rotation right now, except for basically Jesus, the savior of life, Adam Wainwright. Please sign into a contract right now. The only reason you don't have like a 27-game losing streak is Adam Wainwright comes out and shoves every single time out. Let's as we're being very negative, let's give that man his flowers.
Dude,
honest to God, he shows up every start and deals.
He's the only guy to win a game in the month, and it's June 28th today.
That's crazy.
Man, he's almost 40 years old.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have, and it's great for him because he's such an awesome guy. And he probably is related to Jesus somehow. And I believe that. Somebody told me it. But you can't rely on him. Like you shouldn't have to rely on it. Well, Wayne knows this is where we're going to get done. 39-year-old guy, it's crazy. Splashback chimes in and goes, they need to get into a fight in practice. Some distinctive event to call rock bottom. Maybe you go to a bar and crank some 80s music. Then, boom, straight to the World Series championship.
I
say they should go party one night. If they get a day off and they're cruising around at some city, they need to go do their thing and just get it out of their system. And the next day you wake up like, oh, boy. And you go out there and you kick ass. I'm telling you, it works. Just
anything else
crazy.
On the text line?
What it feels like Carlos baseball 70s style all over again. Good luck with that. Sincerely, Esteban.
Oh, there was some bad baseball in the 70s, guys. Trust me.
And hockey.
I think, hockey too. You're right. I think the last Cardinal team to lose 92 games was in 76 or something like that. I mean, it's been that long since you had like a 90-loss season, but they were some bad teams then.
And teams don't usually go this long without having a bad season or a bad stretch. Look, you mentioned it was basically every other decade. Cardinals, 60s, unbelievable. 70s, not so much. 80s, unbelievable. 90s, not so much. But the Cardinals had a 20-year run of being really, really good, and that doesn't happen. So it also shouldn't surprise us that you're having a bit of a fall-off. And also, again, when I'm bending over backwards to try to be fair, it's the fact that they're 4 games below 500 midway through the year. If they get Michaelis back, if they get Flaherty back. The other part is you would think they have to play better. I don't know if they can play worse. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it still wouldn't surprise me.
If it's rock bottom, you got to go up, right?
I don't think the Cardinals are actually going to end the year with a losing record. I really don't. Because I think they'll find a way to still be in the conversation once they get healthy. And again, they can't play worse than how they played the last couple weeks. The only difference is, but they're going to play better teams. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You're about to play the Giants.
Well, and that's just it. We'll have the narrative after this series and the Colorado series. Boy, they played hard, but man, they just don't have enough to beat the Giants. Well, yeah, if you would have played that hard against the lousy teams, you'd be closer to 500. I mean, you know that's coming, right? I mean, we had that with the Blues this year. Remember how they couldn't beat Arizona during that 7-game stretch? You're like, these are the games you need to win. But then later on, it's like, man, they're playing better, but they're getting Colorado and they're getting Vegas every night. You can't count on wins. It's going to be the same.
Remember that, Jimmy?
Yeah, it's going to be the same story.
Remember that 7 damn days, 7 games in a row, and they kept getting their asses kicked? And that was rock bottom for them.
Yeah, it was.
Remember that? And we're like, what are we doing? Like, we're like, oh,
God. It's the same kind of feel with this Cardinal team where it's at right now. They can't get out of their own way.
Here's a good one. 2019 NLCS showed how far behind this team is. You could say they are just 2 years removed from the NLCS, but how good were they that year? Or how good were they that year, really? How did they even get there? I went to multiple playoff games in 2019, and they weren't sellouts. People still didn't want to get that excited, even though they made it that far in 2019.
Yeah,
there's some truth in that.
That's another fair point where if you look at it, now when you get to the NLCS, you're in the Final Four, you absolutely have to give the Cardinals credit for getting there. And that's a big accomplishment. You get there, though, and you get swept by the team that eventually wins the World Series. So even though you're in the Final Four, you're not necessarily that close to being a legit World Series contender. And also some of that is matchup based in terms of you played a Braves team that was about a similar team to you, and you beat them, by the way, in their barn because they had home field. So give the Cardinals all the credit in the world for that. However, I don't think 2019 was a year where you looked at the Cardinals and said, they're a top 4 team in baseball. They were more, in my opinion, like a top 8, 9, 10 team, top third. So give them credit for that. But they got a good matchup first round, and they beat a team similar to them. But were they a top 4 or 5 team in baseball in 2019? No. However, look at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Cardinals are probably a top 2 or 3 team in all of baseball, right? With the Giants.
A couple times.
The Giants won 3 championships in 10, 12, 14. But for the Cardinals, you win in 11. You go NLCS 12. You go World Series 13. You go NLCS 14. You go 100 wins in 15. So that period of 5 years, the Cardinals are probably, whether you base it on regular season wins or postseason performance, they're probably a top 2 or 3 team in all of baseball, which I always say, don't forget that. They were there, but they have not been there the last 5 years. They've been more like, in my opinion, maybe a 9, 10, 11, 12 type team if you were to power rank them in the 30 teams in Major League Baseball. That's where I think they sit.
Yes, but they're sliding
this year for sure.
Further back real fast.
Yeah, that was a good year. Those are good years. Blues were awesome. Cardinals. Sometimes you got to sit back and realize, as a fan base in St. Louis, we talked about that in the first hour there, Charlie. Like the fans had it pretty good. Like the Blues are awesome, the Cardinals are winning, everybody was happy, and then it's just funny how that works, man. Here's a couple more, by the way. Joe Booz chimes back in. Who's been kind of cool. He apologized for being a meanie to us, Charlie. It's all good. Doesn't it say something about the talent evaluation when you literally have no one in the minors who they can call up?
There's a lot of look. They don't have anything really down below. They got Liberatore, where they're putting all their eggs in one basket. His game the other night, this was the talk was he was pretty good. Well, yeah, he threw 5 1/3, gave up 4 runs in 5 1/3. He struck out 9, but he also gave up 2 homers. That's not grounds for getting promoted to the major leagues. That's okay, not bad, but you'd still need to work on some things. But that's the one guy they got to go, well, if we're calling somebody up, he's the guy. You go, well, that's not going to help.
And those guys really aren't ready. I think before the season started, though, Matthew Liberatore was probably on the track to, they wanted to, and I'm saying before the season started, best case scenario, the Cardinals would have liked him to make a ton of starts down there, build his arm up, get to the point where he's at an innings count where they feel good about next year, and then call him up September-ish, need some help, put him in the bullpen, which they always do with guys like Dakota Hudson, Alex Reyes going years back. That, to me, seemed like the likely track for Matthew Liberatore. And now you're asking him to be the savior of the rotation, and it's still in June, which is
21
not right. It's not fair to him, but it also speaks to how the Cardinals minor league system is set up. And John Mozeliak has said this straight up, by the way. They have some elite prospects. When you look at Liberatore, who is not ready to be an everyday big league starter. Now, maybe he can surprise us, but I think he would also struggle a bit. But hell, at this point, give him a shot. Nolan Gorman, probably a year-ish away, but he's a stud. But he's a year away. Okay, Jordan Walker, way far away, but you still love what you got there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but he was just in high school last year.
He's only 19.
But you don't have that bunch of dudes at Memphis that are ready to ride the Memphis to St. Louis highway back and forth and really contribute.
Look, Lars Nootbaar's here this week, and he's had a couple of pretty good games.
He's the best player, I think, on the team.
The reality is he was like 7th on the depth chart of outfielders. I mean, once you get past your starting 3, then you go, well, you had Austin Dean, you had Justin Williams, they called up Scotty Hurst. Now you're going down to Lars Nootbaar, who, look, sorry, they can't convince me they thought he was going to be here. Good for him. He's taken advantage of this opportunity. But that's how far down the chart you're going with your just getting an outfielder up here. Rondon was a free agent pickup, and he's not all that great. I mean, you just see the depth there is not on the bench, and that is not helping out all the issues that they're having, for sure.
And same with the rotation, because you're not going down there and bringing up folks that you have a ton of confidence in. You're going to get a guy like Wade LeBlanc, who, again, give him credit, but he's a journeyman left-hander who's been around for a long time, but some other organizations this year had already moved on from. And I hope he does really well, but that's what you're turning to when you're in this spot where things are looking very poor for the St. Louis Cardinals.